one by one, please don't crowd. Um, Keep your arms and hands inside the vehicle at all times. We will be going to magical lands, exploring many fun things tonight. I am excited tonight for a multitude of reasons, but I also just want to shout out before we even begin and get into this discussion and chat. Please use the chat. Please use the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you throughout, if you can. But let me introduce, as people are filing in here, Nicole Lintmuth.
Yes.
She is just a light, I would say, a light. If you may have caught her in a chat with Jen Padalecki. She did a little chat with Nicole and some other guests about banned books a couple weeks ago. But Nicole is the owner of Betty's Pages, an independent bookstore in Lowell, Michigan. Betty's Pages' mission is to cultivate community, empower readers, and maintain a welcoming space that is diverse, inclusive, and affirming. And it's a partner store of Libro.fm, which is a really cool platform that we've partnered with in the past for Book Bash, which it makes easy for people to find audiobooks and help support local bookstores, which is really cool. But Nicole is a passionate reader and defender of banned books. I've seen it. Nicole, thank you for your service. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am
Good,
the
good.
definition of a messy queer today, and I am just going to lean into that, and it's fine.
Well, you know, it's Friday, so messy
Exactly.
away. I think we're all a little bit there right now. Please raise your hand if you are messy as well. We want to be in good company here.
Yes.
There, see?
If you're perfect, this is probably not the place for you because,
Yeah, if you're just clean and ready and just rested, maybe not quite
yes,
for you.
chaos,
Nicole,
chaos. Mhm.
um, let's start here. You must be an avid reader. How did you get into this bookstore business?
Yeah, so I grew up just reading everything I could get my hands on. The idea of like owning a bookstore was always that thing in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, that'd be so cool, but who does that? Like, in the age of Amazon and big box stores, and You've Got Mail, like, was my favorite movie as a kid. And I was like, there's no point. Indies are dying. Why should I own a bookstore? So I had a very boring, very practical career working in banking. And I got a promotion and I got a great job and everything was great on paper, but I hated my life. I did not want to go to work. I was like, if I have to do this day in, day out, like I'm going to go like crazy. I can't do this. So being a giant nerd, I decided to write a business plan. And I showed it to my husband and I showed it to my friends, and they were supposed to tell me, that's nice. How about you go get like a different job instead? But no, they said, this is amazing. You need to do it. And we're like super excited for me. And I have shop cats who have a mind of their own, so don't mind
Yeah,
them.
also, just to be clear, when a pet is present, the pet must be introduced, or we will just descend into chaos.
This is Paige.
Perfect.
She is a troublemaker, the instigator of trouble. We also have Betty, who's her sister, who is probably sleeping somewhere because that's like her favorite thing to do. But this one's, if there's anything happening, Paige is going to be a part of it. And so she'll be
Copy.
on for this.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Yes.
No, I have shop cats. I'm totally used to that. But yeah, so I started planning to open the store and going through that whole process. Took about like 9 months, and we opened January of 2020, which was super fun. And on day 9, our store actually flooded. It was raining in the store when I went in, and I was like, I just quit my job. My store is flooding. It's raining. I laid on the ground and cried for a little bit. We moved into our location we're at now in February, mid-February of 2020. And then, made it a month and
Okay.
then COVID. So
Yep. Stuff happened.
yes.
Mhm.
But the nice thing about that has been that because our first year was so chaotic, I got to try a lot of different things, and I just really didn't have that, like, this is how we've always done it kind of mentality, because I hadn't been
Yeah.
doing it long enough. So I really got to lean into what I wanted to do with the store, with everything that happened with COVID. And then the summer of 2020, I knew, being in a very small town in a very conservative part of West Michigan, my store was already pretty liberal. Like, there was no hiding what I was when you came in, but I just leaned into it more because I saw the need for it. And my audience has really responded to that, because you don't see that a lot around here. And then as things have continued and we've seen challenges and banned books and all of these things happening everywhere, it's just really kind of reinforced for me, like, why what I'm doing is important,
Yeah.
and why I'm so passionate about what I do. So that's kind of how I got to here.
That's amazing. And so you've really cultivated a safe space for people, a place for people to explore, a space to find great resources for lots of different kinds of books and from lots of different authors. Can you talk a little bit about the process for you of finding these amazing authors and diverse authors and voices and what that means to you in terms of the store?
So for a lot of it, I just read a lot. I am constantly reading. If I'm not like physically reading, I have an audiobook going like all of the time. It's just one of those things that like I have to constantly be consuming media, because the books that I particularly like to highlight and focus are not the ones that are getting big marketing dollars and pushes from the publishers. These are the ones that are kind of riding under the radar. And if you don't know where to look for them, you're not going to find them. So I have to do a little bit more work as I'm kind of stocking our shelves, finding that some sections are easier than others. I'm a
Right.
huge romance reader. Oh, Jesus, here comes Betty. So this is Betty. She's the chunky one. And she just climbed up my leg. So romance is really easy for me because I love romance and I will read it voraciously, constantly. Literary fiction, for instance, not so much fun for me. I don't enjoy that. So I require like a lot of reviews and friends and different like resources for finding those books. Because if I was on a deserted island, I still probably wouldn't want to read them. It's just not my jam. It's like Pride and Prejudice. I'm never going to read it. It's fine if you like it. I'm happy for you, but I learned everything I know about classic literature from Wishbone, and that's just kind of been how I've continued on with classic literature and literary fiction. So
that's and so well, let's talk like why we're here today. We have lots of readers here. We have some authors as well. And please, if you're in the audience and you have questions about queer lit, or you want to just comment and start a conversation around stuff that you love, I think this is a great place for that to happen, because Nicole's obviously such a fan and such a great curator. But I'd love to sort of dig into it. So use the Q&A and the chat. But let's talk about let's talk about what you love. Let's start with romance, and we'll move to other topics as well. But what's happening in romance right now?
Oh my gosh. So what I love most about romance, people have a lot of kind of preconceived notions about what romance is. They think about like the bodice ripper, mass market, like little paperbacks that their grandmas used to read, or the Harlequins. Romance is nothing like that anymore. I mean, those still exist, but romance, when it comes to adult genre fiction, is probably the most diverse, most broad category that we have in adult fiction, because it's the bestseller. Like, romance is the category of books that pays for every other category of books in the publishing world. Romance readers are like intense. They will read dozens and dozens of books a week. They're incredibly passionate about their like favorite authors or their favorite tropes. So I have a lot of fun in that genre, and I love digging into it. And it's been really, really exciting because we're starting to see contemporary romance, which is romances that happen, you know, in like our day-to-day kind of life, has always been pretty diverse, and it's been getting even better. But we're also now starting to see more diversity happening in historical romance, in paranormal romance, and romantic suspense. And that has been really, really exciting, because those areas were very white, very straight for a very, very long time. So getting to have like a book like this, which is Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This is what you think of when you think of like a cheesy historical romance, right? You've got like the couple on the cover and the historical card, but it's queer. Like, we've got a sapphic couple here. It is absolutely amazing to get to see. And they're doing such an amazing job of making it feel natural. Like, with historical romance and having a queer couple, obviously, you know, times were different, attitudes were different. It wasn't like they could just walk down the street being a couple.
Right.
But queerness has always existed. We've been around forever. So queer couples did exist in that time. So how can we tell those stories in a way that is authentic to them, but also makes sense to modern day readers? And they're doing an amazing job. Erica Ridley is absolutely phenomenal. She's got a whole bunch of books that cross, like, she's got straight romances, she's got queer romances, she does it all. She's great at them. And then we have one of my absolute favorites, Cat Sebastian. So this is another one of those, like, this is what you think of when you think of like cheesy historical romance. This is It Takes Two to Tumble. And it's just like this really fantastic, dorky, nerdy, cheesy romantic series set during the Regency era, which is one of the most popular eras for historical romances.
Right.
And we get to be on the covers now. It's so exciting. So
awesome.
Yeah, they're doing an amazing job. And just seeing that kind of hitting more across all ages, or all like subgenres. And then this one is probably my most favorite in historical romance. It's A Lady for a Duke, Alexis Hall. Alexis Hall also really like excels in messy queers, which is probably why I
really like relatability.
Yes, I was like, I feel this. Yeah. So this is A Lady for a Duke, where we have a trans protagonist in a romance. It's friends to lovers. It's all of the favorite tropes in there. There's fantastic like tension and steam and just like everything that you want in a great romance with a trans protagonist. Like
with some diversity, some inclusion.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. So I love this one. Beautiful. And yes, to the question of list of recs, I made so many lists. They will be in a fancy thing that you'll get later. But yes, so many lists. All of these that I'm showing you will be on these lists. Plus,
yeah, and we'll send that out after as well, and we'll send a copy of this video to everybody who registered. Amy asks, do you do sensitivity reading, or are you connected with sensitivity readers that you could recommend?
I do know some, and I do some myself. Sensitivity reading is super, super important. I'm one of those people who, there's a lot of conversation and debate, like should straight authors be writing stories about queer couples? Should, cis women be writing characters that are trans or, male or anything like that? And I'm one of those people who I feel like, yes, if you're doing it well, if you're getting sensitivity readers, which are people who are a part of the community that you're writing about, reading it to make sure and point out, hey, like, here's a bias that you probably didn't know that you had that's showing, or this is a stereotype that's harmful, or this is just inaccurate. And so, yeah, I do that. I particularly enjoy doing it for kids' books because I have a really huge passion for kids lit. But I do also know some others who do it for kind of broader ranges. So.
Amazing. We were also getting a request to see your amazing t-shirt.
Yes. Okay. Let me pull this down. Yep. So this is our Only Pride, No Prejudice design. It is a fan favorite. I know, for somebody who doesn't like Pride and Prejudice, the fact that this is one it's fine. So this was a partnership with my favorite designer who did our logo, and they did our mural in the store. And we wanted to do something for Pride Month that was literary themed. So we have a literary Pride shirt that we do every year. So this was our first year's. This was 2021. And we do currently have it available because it's LGBTQ History Month and everybody always wants it. So you can get this on my website. It's
excellent. Yes, bettyspages.com, correct? Yes. I just went there yesterday. Well, let's keep going. So like when you said book recs, people were like, let's go. Yes. What else you got? Tell us what you read.
So one of my all-time favorite books this year, it was an absolute sleeper hit for me. I didn't even know that it was queer when I started reading it. Cozy mysteries are mysteries where the blood and guts happens off page. The person who's solving the crime is not involved in law enforcement. They're like a little old lady, or they own a bookstore, or they're a crafter, or something along those lines. And they're slightly ridiculous, and they lean into that. Like, they don't try and take themselves seriously, which I love. So this one, Magic Lies and Deadly Pies by Misha Pop. I love it so much. I'm just going to read you the first line of the blurb because I can't do it any better than that. The first time Daisy Ellery killed a man with a pie, it was an accident. Now it's her calling. So she's a baker. She makes pies that take revenge on the bad men in her town who have wronged women, and it kills them. And it's fine because it doesn't leave any like trace. It's not poison. It's just magic that kills them. So she has to solve a crime before she gets like pegged for it, because she didn't actually do the crime that she has to solve. And what I loved so much about this book is that in cozy mysteries, a really common trope is the love triangle. These are series that will have like 25 books in them, and the will they, won't they love triangle usually goes the whole length of that. In this book, the love triangle, she has a female love interest and a male love interest. And it was just so no big deal. It was no big deal. It just was. Nobody commented on it being anything at all other than just, oh, okay. She kissed a girl in this chapter, and then she kissed a guy in this chapter. Cool. And it blew me away. I had no idea. I wasn't expecting it. And when it came up, I was listening to the audiobook version. I actually had to pull my car over and be like, what did I just listen to? Like, this is wild. So this is really, really exciting because mystery thriller is one of the adult genre fictions where we're really low on the ground when it comes to representation of queer anything. So I want a million more in this series, and I love it, and it's phenomenal. And then I just picked up this one. It's called Renovated to Death. And basically it's these two men who renovate houses and flip them. And I don't know if they're married or if they're just dating, but one of their ex-boyfriends dies and they have to figure out who did it. And so I'm very excited to read that one.
That's amazing. And also, I feel like our moderator, Kristen, may want to pick up that first one because she makes so many pies, and the murder may be secondary. But Kristen, please take it slow.
I already wrote it down. I got
Yes.
I knew it. Okay.
There's an amazing pie recipe at the back too, which is another thing I love about cozies is you get lots of
instant sale.
Yes,
Done.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing. Actually, we were seeing something here about the romance fiction based on a true queer couple. Do you have anything like that you can think of off the top of your head?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. What I love so much about romance is they pull a lot of tropes and they pull a lot of like things that you might recognize from real life. Like it's very much that like Law and Order, you know,
pulled from the headline.
Real events.
Yeah.
But I can't think of any that are like specifically about a couple. You will have some like literary fiction ones based off of mythology. So I guess if you believe that those are real, then yes, those are based off of real couples. So you've got like Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I guess also technically, I'm a Katie Roberts obsessee. She writes like steamy romances and she does them really, really well. And every character in all of her series is just canonically by Pan. Like everybody is, nobody comments on it. It's completely normal, totally just no big deal. That's what everybody is. And so she did a whole series based off of Greek mythologies as well. And the first one is Neon Gods. And I'm obsessed. And I've read it 3 times this year.
It's amazing. We actually did a GISH item during our scavenger hunt with Song of Achilles in mind. And the content was incredible.
Yes, it will wreck you emotionally, but
people were like, "How dare you do this to my feels?" Like it was amazing to watch.
Read Song of Achilles and then go read Katie Roberts for your like uplifting happiness to kind of recover from it.
Get back up again. Yeah.
Balance.
We have a question from Tobias. I'd love to know your advice for supportive books for children with trans parents. I am trans, and although I have books that explain my experience for my daughter, I can't find books that are more from her point of view, something that shows she isn't alone in her experiences.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. I don't have them in store to like show you, but they are on the list that are linked there. There are a couple of books with non-binary parents and trans parents, both fiction and nonfiction, that are picture books. So they're, perfectly like for kids of experiencing like, my parent is transitioning or they've coming out and I need to understand like, how my mom is now, my dad, or how, however, like everybody does it differently when it comes to parenting. Some will change their title, some will keep their title. So it's just a really well done and lovely book. And of course I can't think of the title off the top of my head, but I do know I specifically linked it in those, in those things. And then there's just a ton, oh my gosh, picture books are amazing. And I am obsessed and they just like feel something for me every time that I read them. And I have so many, but
yes, let's go.
Specifically with trans protagonists in them, we have Jack Not Jackie and then I'm Not a Girl. And these aren't specifically dealing with parents, these are where the children are trans. But what I love about Jack Not Jackie is this one comes from the perspective of their cisgendered sister, who is kind of dealing with that, like, this was my sister who I was really excited to do all of these girly things with. And now they're not my sister, they're my brother. And she doesn't really know how to kind of process that. So throughout this book, you kind of follow her going through that story of understanding that like your expectations of what you were going to have with your sister have changed, but you still have Jack who can still do all of these fun things with you. And so it's just a really great job of kind of helping kids to understand the difference between gender identity and gender expression. And they just do it. They do it so well. It's so good.
That's awesome. Well, I know Amanda here just said, I'm going to share this list with my coworker who orders the books for our library. So well done.
I love
That's
libraries.
amazing. Me too. We're getting some questions too in the chat about asexual representation.
Yes, I do. I even have asexual romances, which make me very happy. So the first one, this one is a demisexual romance. Demisexual is on the ace spectrum. And basically it is somebody who has to have a really deep emotional connection with somebody before they will kind of engage in a sexual or romantic relationship with them. So Never Been Kissed by Timothy Janowski. Adorable. It's amazing. It is about this guy who works at a local drive-in movie theater that is really struggling because drive-in movie theaters aren't really like a big thing anymore. And so he has to team up with his high school crush to save the drive-in, and they fall in love, and it's super cute. And then there's also Claire Kahn. I linked it in my thing. The Romantic Agenda. And that's an actual ace romance, which is super exciting. And it's phenomenal. It's very like sudsy beach read sort of romance. And I adore those. And then in YA, there is so much ace era representation because YA books are just like peak when it comes to diversity. And I absolutely adore that. So you have Loveless by Alice Oseman, who is the creator of Heartstopper, which everybody loves and enjoys. And it follows, this girl who goes away to college, and she's kind of coming to grips with her asexuality because she never knew that that was a thing. She just thought that she was kind of broken or hadn't found the right person yet, which is a really super common thing that people deal with because having language is a lot easier now than it used to be, but there are a lot of places where that language is being denied because of banned books. And so kids don't really get this understanding that there is an option other than just kind of heteronormativity, like all of these things. And so that one's just a really lovely story. And I love everything that Alice does. They're great.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I've got another Q&A here before we move on. I personally know a lot of published authors who got their start in fan fiction.
Yes.
Most especially queer romance, where their published work was initially a fan fiction story. Do you think the sheer amount of fan fiction that is still being made is partially responsible for the rise in queer fiction?
Yes. 1000%. When you have things like AO3 and Wattpad now has their own publishing arm. Like they publish authors who were authors on Wattpad because publishers are a little slow on the uptake. Like it takes them a little while, but eventually they catch up. And they were seeing that there were just millions of people who were resonating with these stories, and these people who were writing them were doing an amazing job writing just really well thought out stories that honestly rival a lot of professionally like done and edited books. And they're like, hey, we can make money off of this. And so they finally caught on and they're catching up with it. And yeah, I would say that that is a huge reason why we are starting to see more representation, both fanfic as well as self-published authors, and the rise of authors kind of going the indie route and filling in like niches and gaps that traditional publishing was missing. And then, eventually traditional publishing is catching on that they can make money from that, which is their ultimate goal. So they're starting to kind of step in and be like, oh, hey, people want this. I can do that too.
There's an audience and there's a demand and supply. Yeah, and Xandra brings up, there's a reason why AO3 won a Hugo.
Yes.
Here you go.
It's amazing.
All right, what else you got?
Okay, so we have also just, where to put it, an amazing number of board books. Like we can literally start these conversations with kids from birth. So we have My Two Moms and Me. This one is a classic. There's also My Two Dads and Me. And just giving kids the opportunity to see their families represented in a book is hugely important. And conversely, giving kids a chance to see families of their peers or people that they might experience throughout in the world represented on the page helps normalize these conversations and make it so that, when little Timmy goes to school and meets Sarah, who has two moms, he's not going to be like, ew, that's weird. He's gonna be like, oh yeah, no big deal, which is usually how kids respond to conversations like this because they're way better at it than adults. And then there's also just a really amazing book series called First Conversations, and they're board books. And they have one it's called Being You, and it's about gender identity. And it's a board book that helps kids understand, again, the difference between gender expression and gender identity, and having those conversations about pronouns and understanding that, sometimes people may look one way, but are actually another. And it's just really well done. They also have one called Our Skin, which talks about racism. And the third one is called Yes, No, and it's about consent. And it's written by child psychologists who really are experts in their fields and doing it in a language that kids are going to connect with and understand and just really be able to like dive into. Oh, I love them. And often they also create really great conversations for the adults who are reading them to kids. Because for some adults, we really have to like break things down.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. Like however you absorb the information, Never gonna say a bad thing about it. And
I
honestly,
I I have a 13-year-old, and they asked me the other day about a very graphic queer
mhm,
sexual thing, and I
yeah,
was like, "Thank you for asking me that question. I really appreciate you coming to me with this. I don't know." Like, it was a great moment where I was just like, I would love to be
yeah.
the guy that knows all this stuff, but I don't. And to be able to have resources too, to like point your
Yeah.
kids or point other kids in your life to these great
And
resources is
it's
great.
really nice being able to model for kids like I don't know everything.
Yeah,
I have to find things too. Let's go find them together. Let's go
totally.
find good resources and do, what we can do to find a great answer for you. And I think that a lot of parents, especially parents who are, cisgender and straight,
Mm,
are really just like, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to say the wrong
yeah,
thing. I don't want to screw up. Um, and that's just such a like screwing up and showing your kids like, okay, I messed up. I need to apologize now, or I need to do better now, helps them to learn how to do that too. So we
yeah.
need to not be scared as adults to show that for kids.
Absolutely. There's other a question. Favorite queer graphic novels? Anything you want to share there?
Oh, so many. There's so many, so many. One of my favorites is Check Please. So this is a book about a college hockey team. And the main character here is just the most adorable, sweetest thing ever. He is a YouTuber who makes pies. He's just very sweet, very adorable, and he was a figure skater. So when he goes to college, the hockey team recruits him. He's never played hockey before, so it's very fun watching like kind of that fish out of water. And what I love most about this graphic novel and this story is like college hockey teams. Like you think of that and you think, ooh, right? No, this is the most wholesome book that has ever been written that has the word fuck in it a lot. These guys are so supportive of each other. They are like the absolute opposite of toxic masculinity. And when our main character here falls in love with the captain of the hockey team, they're so supportive. Again, it's just so normalized. Like there's
Mm,
a lot of, these two coming to grips with their relationship and figuring out, what they want and what they are. But the coming out portion of it is never like the drama or the point
yeah,
of the book. They're exploring their identity and they're exploring their stuff. But their friends are so supportive. And honestly, their friends knew well before them that they were in love with each other. So I love this one. It's super, super cute. And I'm very passionate about it because one of our local communities tried to ban it. And so it makes me even more
got
like
it.
with it. And then did I grab it? No, of course I did not. Oh, yep, I did.
Mm,
This is another one that really frequently gets banned or challenged locally. It's called Breakaways. It's another sports book. This one is for middle grade. So it's about like 8 to 12-year-olds. But honestly, I don't think age ranges should exist because great books know no age limit. And in this one, there is a soccer team, and they're terrible at it. They're really, really just horrible soccer players. They're like the third string soccer team for their school or whatever. And so it's just a really fun story about friendship and fitting in and knowing that like winning is not the end all be all. And we have fantastic trans representation as well as queer representation and romance, and like sports romance is for everybody. And I love that. So
mm.
this one is super fun and adorable. So definitely.
And I love seeing, BIPOC authors. Like it's so important that we're also within queerness and like making sure that we're not being monolithic in any of these topics, whether it's genre or in representation, that we're making sure that lots of voices are happening. I'm seeing some authors here of color.
So exciting. When queer literature first kind of started hitting the scene and hitting the mainstream, it was very white, it was very cis.
Mm,
And we're
yeah,
starting to get more traction with having stories by, Black queer authors, Black trans queer authors, and like
yeah,
having these voices being traditionally published and put out into the marketplace, kind of with that backing, just annoyingly, but it validates these experiences. And that's how we
yeah,
change culture and we change people's attitudes by them seeing these things normalized, which just should be normalized anyways. But
yeah.
fiction is an amazing way to introduce concepts to people and introduce communities to people who wouldn't otherwise be engaged with them.
Amazing. Awesome. We have a couple more questions in the Q&A. For those of you who don't want to hear about graphic things, maybe just take a moment to step back for a moment. We have a question. Are there novels that explore queer sex as more of a topic worth exploring in its own right? In my experience, it tends to be a few pages and then moves on to another scene of a plot rather than leaving the camera rolling and having long form conversation during intimacy. Thanks in
Ugh,
advance.
Yes, there's a lot. So we'll start first from the nonfiction side. We're actually starting to see resources for parents and teens and kids that explore sexuality and identity from the whole range. I'm a huge fan of Heather Karina. They're the creator of Scarlet Teen, which is a fantastic resource website all about safe sex and sex ed and all of these topics. They did sex, just like S.E.X, like, yeah. And it's just like this giant book that helps people from teens all the way to their early 20s to understand how to have safe sex beyond more than just like penis, vagina. Like there are a lot of options. Here's how to do it safely for everybody. Talking about relationships and consent and all of these topics that are super important when we look at the statistics of queer couples who deal with things like domestic violence and intimate partner violence, giving kids resources early so they can recognize like problems in relationships before it goes too far. And even for like our 8 to 12 range who are just kind of starting to explore these topics, we've got Sex is a Funny Word and Sex. Those are both by Corey Silverberg, and they're just incredibly inclusive across the whole range of sexuality, gender, all of these things. And it's so lovely to see, and it's just beautiful. So those are just some of the really amazing resources that are out there. And then when we're looking at, fictionalized couples and sexuality and all these things, they are finally starting to kind of get there. It used to be like fade to black was kind of normal, which is where you're like, oh, and they were in bed and then, oh, next morning. But no, now you're actually starting to get it. There's this really fantastic series that I just got for the store. It's called Queering Consent. And one of them is called Queer Werewolves Destroy Capitalism, which is the best title I've ever heard in an entire life. But they are erotica with queer sex and queer couplings and just a heavy consent focus, which I really love. Katie Roberts, again, if you like steamy smut, peak, she does it all. She's got couples and thruples and just every combination thereof, and just does a really, really fantastic job with the sex in those books. Really fantastic. But yeah, no, we're starting to see it, and it's just really, really exciting to have that. A Lady for a Duke. Again, we have, a trans protagonist, and, they're having sex and they're being intimate and they're not shying away from that. And it's just really lovely to see.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, as someone outside the community, just the erasure through like, oh, it's all gone, nothing happened here. Like, it's just that, like, we have these lives and some of us choose to express those lives in many different ways. So there should be books for all of it.
And even for people like you, who are not a part of the community, I very specifically stock my store and I shelve in my store where we don't have a queer section. Our whole store is just queer. Like, I don't want straight kids or straight adults or straight anybody to be like, oh, that's not for me, I can't read that. No, I want them to just pick up a book because it looks good, and then they go, oh, oops, there's a trans character, cool, okay. It's just really how you kind of normalize again these things, and you give people windows into communities that they're not a part of. And also helps the queer people not feel like they're othered and, oh, I have to go over to my section. We're just everywhere.
Totally. We have another question. Any suggestions for books about bisexuals who only figured it out later in life, like 35 plus? Later in life, how dare you?
Yes. So bisexual representation makes me very, very happy as a bisexual myself, who I knew from a very young age that I was bi, but I didn't have the language for it because I grew up in the 90s in rural Michigan. And so it's really, really great to see, especially, again, romance has it, but a lot of books that have queer character or have bi characters are our age, are millennials or Gen X, or even, boomers who are like, I didn't know that this was an option. I didn't know that I wasn't a freak because I was attracted to, people regardless of their gender. So yeah, there's just a lot of representation. In the list that I made, I put little like, if it's sapphic, which is a term that is kind of an all-encompassing term for relationships between women and also some non-binary people, or Achillean, which is a kind of all-encompassing term for relationships between men, which can also include non-binary individuals. But I did specifically make a bi AF tag. And so those are for books that have bi main characters, and a lot of those kind of explore themes of like, understanding yourself and finding the language and finding what works for you for your, am I bi, am I pan, am I, what works for me, what label makes me feel good and I'm going to use. So those, I can't think of a title off the top of my head. I just know there's lots of them and I use that tag specifically to highlight them.
It's amazing. So we're almost at the end of our class here. When there's lots of links, and we've sent it out a couple of times in the chat, but we will be sending more information too in our email with this video. But Nicole, what else can we say about Queer Lit and the diversity within it? What else do you want to impart to our lovely group of watchers here?
So the most important thing is just be aware that these are the books that are being banned, that are being challenged, that are being kept from our kids and being kept from our communities because there's a segment of the population who's scared of it. So when you have, these amazing lists of books who already are not getting the media dollars and the marketing from the publishers that they should be getting, and then they're getting banned or challenged. And so people are not getting the option of just kind of bumping into them at the library. That's dangerous. We have communities where we're having conversations where kids are hearing that they're an abomination and that they're terrible and that they're awful and these books are pornographic and all of these things. So just take what you learned here, go see if your library has these books. If they don't, request that they do, and just really kind of pay attention to conversations that are happening because banning and challenging is happening everywhere. If you are in the United States, you are no more than 30 minutes away from a community that has banned or challenged a book in the last year. So be aware of those conversations. Go to your school board meetings, go to your library board meetings, ask them, why don't they have more representation on the shelves if they already don't? If they do, go in support of them. Say, hey, I love that I can take my kids to the library and we can find these great books that we really love. Show them that there's a large part of the community that is supporting it and is reading these books and is supportive of these authors. And when you're looking for more recommendations, because I had way too much fun putting books on those lists and it is just barely scratching the surface of what is out there. My recommendations are find your queer bookstores, find the queer authors that if you read a book and you're like, I really love this author, follow them on every social media. They will make great recommendations because they also read a lot of books. Find your librarians, especially our, teen librarians and our kid librarians. They are so well-versed in diverse literature and what is out there. And they love talking about books as much as I do. So there are resources that are around you that are just super easy to access for everybody. And I hope that you will avail yourself of them. And then hopefully, as we have more interest in these and have people buying more of them, publishers will finally start putting the marketing dollars and supporting these books so that the wider world can find out about them.
Beautifully said. The only thing I would add is if you're in the United States, maybe check up on, we have some elections coming up. Maybe check on where people stand on some of these issues. Maybe find out where they stand on LGBTQIA plus issues specifically too, and see, there are people behind these things, whether it's a local election, a school board. There's a lot of opportunities for us to step up and one of my favorite experiences was going to Austin and Jen and I going around and putting some of the banned books in free little libraries around town. You can be subversive by including
and if you
things
are a
in
person
places.
who has any kind of influence over your workplace, your church, your school, your anything like that, when it comes to your buying decisions there and what books that they're stocking, start nudging. We have a couple of churches locally who have lending libraries full of queer books that are open and affirming and accessible. And it's just amazing to see their congregations who are maybe like, I don't really know what this is, embracing that uncomfortableness and learning from it and kind of growing in that. So you have a lot more influence probably than you know, and start having those conversations and encouraging them and supporting these authors and supporting these books so that we can get more of them.
Beautiful. Well, needless to say, please support Nicole and Betty's pages. Go to her website. We'll be sending out links to social as well. Go follow her. Sorry, I didn't check your pronouns before we chatted.
Oh, yes, she, her.
Great. And obviously support Queer Lit. This is not a niche thing anymore. This is happening like you said, YA is exploding with amazing content. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing for people to be able to find representation and stories that they want to read that represent them. So thank you for doing all of that. And thank you for coming. And thank you for everybody joining us. Thank you, Tanisa. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Nicole. Please go support Betty's Pages and Queer Lit, and take care.